The LA Kings return home, still looking to get on that roll heading into the playoffs. That and a Viktor Arvidsson health update on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we are on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It's a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 17 years and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 back if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're going to look back at the Kings game in Dallas on Saturday evening. If you missed it, we actually did a rare post-game show on Friday after the Kings shut out the Blackhawks. So if you missed that and you want to hear us talk about the win over the Blackhawks, please go back and check out Friday's show. Now, the Kings did wrap up their mini 3-game road trip, 3 games in 4 days, with a tough matchup in Dallas against one of the top teams in the NHL, playing back-to-back road games on back-to-back nights. LA, as far as the lineup against the Stars, went away from that 11-7 matchup that they've used pretty successfully and went to the more traditional 12-6 setup with 12 forwards and 6 defensemen. That meant that Jacob Moverar was out as the extra defenseman, and Arthur Kaliyev was in the lineup for the first time since the last time the Kings played the Stars. That was a week previous, the last Saturday before. We also had Cam Talbot sitting out this one, playing the back-to-back games on back-to-back nights. David Riddick would get the start in net for the LA Kings. As for the game against the Stars, if you missed it, a quick recap, and this one would be mostly Dallas, especially early on. 3 goals in the first period for the Stars. Now, the first one was a fluke goal off the glass, bounced in front of the net, actually went off the back of goalie David Riddick and into the net. That's a tough one. I know that I've seen goalies, in particular Dominik Hasek back in the day, when he knew that the puck had ricocheted off of the glass and he didn't know where it was, he would literally skate his entire body into the net so it wouldn't bounce off of him and into the net, which actually was pretty brilliant and probably part of why he's a Hall of Famer. But it's hard to blame David Riddick on that one. Again, a fluke goal, but that got Dallas off to the 1-0 lead. And then they would add 2 more goals on shots that you could argue were stoppable shots. Second period, Stars score on the power play. They didn't actually set up the power play, so it was the Kings penalty kill giving up a goal technically, but it was on a rush play. So it was on the power play, but it wasn't the traditional set it up, move it around, and score a power play goal for what that's worth. I think when it was 4-0 in the second period, if it hadn't been for the Kings playing the night before, I think we would have seen a goalie change at that point. But head coach Jim Hiller deciding to wisely bite the bullet and hope for something good to happen, but deciding to keep David Riddick into the game. The Kings would get on the scoreboard in the third period. Kevin Fiala scoring his 22nd of the year. That was with Pierre Dubois getting the assist. It was right after a faceoff win. Dubois won the faceoff back to Fiala. He shot it and scored. And that would be the final goal of the game as Dallas beats the LA Kings by a score of 4-1 to wrap up a season sweep of the Kings. Dallas 3-0 against LA, outscoring the Kings in those 3 games 13-3. As for the game recap in this one, the stats, Dallas with the 4-1 win. As far as shots on goal, it did favor the Stars by 1 shot, 29-28. Power play, the Kings only had 1 opportunity. They were 0 for 1, not 1 for 0, as the graphic says if you're watching on YouTube. They were 0 for 1. The Stars were 1 for 2 on their power play chances. Faceoffs favored the Kings 33-31. Block shots favored Dallas 18-12. And the hits favored the Kings 42-18. I don't know if that's a season high. If it's not, it's got to be close. 42 hits for the LA Kings. That's not typical of what they usually do. They're usually in the 20 range or so. So that was certainly an interesting stat to out-hit the Stars by such a wide margin. But in the end, that really didn't mean anything at all. One word to describe the result of the Kings' 4-1 loss to the Stars. And I hate to say it, but I think that one word is predictable. LA playing back-to-back road games on back-to-back nights against a very good team. That in and of itself, not great circumstance for the Kings as far as getting success. This was the 10th time this season the Kings have played back-to-back games on back-to-back nights. In those 10 games in the second half of the back-to-back, the Kings have 2 wins and 8 losses. There was one overtime loss. There was one shootout loss. Now, in the 5 games where the Kings have played back-to-back on back-to-back night, both of them being road games, the Kings are 1-4 in the second of those back-to-back games. Plus, Dallas is obviously one of the top teams in the league, and the Kings don't seem to match up particularly well against them either. As for what head coach Jim Hiller had to say after the loss to the Stars, he said, quote, "We knew they were going to be a little fresher than us at the start. We needed to get through the first 10 minutes of the game. That was one of our keys. Make sure we didn't turn the puck over. We did that twice. 4 odd man rushes in the first period, and that's not a recipe for success. They're a good team. We needed to play a cleaner game. We didn't, and they finished." As far as the positives, the takeaways, the pluses from this game, I actually thought the Kings played hard, just from an effort standpoint. I think the excuse of, well, the Kings were tired and they didn't have their legs because it was a back-to-back games, I didn't really see that, especially early on in the game. Hiller talked about the first 10 minutes. I thought they were pretty even. Shots on goal narrowly favored Dallas 8-7, but it was 2-0 Stars. So that's really what matters. I do give credit to the Kings for showing up and, not thinking, oh, it's back-to-back, blah, blah, blah. We got no chance against this team. They're very good on the road. They showed up, they played hard, but they just didn't have it. And credit the Stars a lot in that regard. As far as the negative takeaways, the minuses, the power play still continues to not be an asset for the Kings. Now only the one opportunity, but they were down 2-1 in the first period, and the Kings get a power play chance, and it was a chance to get back in the game, but they didn't generate anything at all out of it. When you're going up against a good team and you're struggling, those kind of opportunities probably aren't going to come very often, whether it's an odd man rush or a power play chance. And when you get those chances, you got to do something with them. The Kings didn't in this game. More negatives. I thought David Riddick didn't look great. He goals that I think were stoppable. I won't go so far as to say they were soft, but they were stoppable. One of them might have deflected off a King's stick on the way in. Maybe it was hard to tell. And I think both of the second and third goals for Dallas, he was a little bit screened with some traffic in front, so he didn't see the initial release, which caused him to react to the shot just that split second later than he normally would, and that maybe was the difference. But when those shots go in from distance, above the face-off circles, those are ones you got to stop, especially against a good team. You got to make the saves that not only that you're supposed to make, but the ones that are maybe tough saves, but not unstoppable. And unfortunately, David Riddick didn't have his best night against that one. I thought another negative for the Kings was the top line didn't play like the top line that we saw the previous game and the previous night. Andre Kopitar, Adrian Kempe, Quentin Byfield had a great game, in particular Byfield and Kopitar against Chicago, and you would have hoped that they could carry that over a little bit into the next night, and they didn't. They were a total non-factor, no points for the top line. I think for the Kings to beat teams like the Stars, the top line has to be a factor in the game, and they were not. I did want to mention real quick, Arthur Kaliev was back in the lineup for just the third time in 9 games. For the most part, he was on the fourth line, although he did get replaced on the fourth line a couple of times in the second period. He also did get a couple of shifts, I think, on the first period. Jim Hiller mixing things up, especially down, 4-0 at one point in the third period, looking for anything. So there were some times where Kaliev was out, and there were some times he was in. Finished playing 10 minutes and 33 seconds, didn't have any points. He was a -1. He had 2 hits, 1 shot on goal, and it was a pretty good scoring chance, actually. The Dallas defender had broken his stick. Kaliyev recognized it and took advantage by getting off a good shot, knowing that the defender couldn't use his stick to deflect the shot away. But it didn't go in. Unfortunately, Kaliyev still doesn't have a goal since December the 5th, span of 29 games. And if you watch the broadcast, they quoted Jim Hiller as basically saying exactly what I had suspected, that Kaliyev is a scorer who isn't scoring, and he doesn't do the other things well enough to be in the lineup over other players that do those other things well, as far as what the coaches are seeing. So LA is now 34-22-11 on the season, 11-7-1 under Jim Hiller. Kings have 15 games left in the regular season, 9 home and 6 on the road before the playoffs get underway. We will give you a Viktor Arvidsson update and where do the Kings sit going into the playoffs. We'll talk all about that more here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Well, Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from another retirement account with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on a 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. The offer is good through April 30th. Get started Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information. Claims as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investment involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March the 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the best MLB season preview, coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts on the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March the 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. All right. Do we have a Viktor Arvidsson health update? The answer is yes, we do. Now, the last time we saw Arvidsson, he was wearing a red non-contact jersey in practice. Monday, he was in a regular white jersey and participated fully in practice and drills. Afterward, head coach Jim Hiller was quoted by Kings insider Zach Dooley saying, quote, as far as Arvidsson goes, quote, he's really close. He doesn't like to practice in a red jersey. I don't know why, but usually when you come back and you have your first practice in a long time with the team, you're almost always in red. So it just might be a situation where we didn't want to put him in that color, but he's close. He is close, end quote. So does Viktor Arvidsson have some superstition about the color red? Does he have a no trade clause against teams that wear red? That's like 7 teams in the NHL. Anyway, a little bit odd, but apparently he does not like wearing the red non-contact jersey. So if you read within the lines, even though he wasn't in red, he kind of still was as far as the way he was treated in practice. So not quite as close to returning necessarily as you might, think. We saw Adrian Kempe wear the red non-contact jersey, and then he played in the next game. And then we've seen other players who maybe have worn it for one game, came back and didn't have it, and then played in the next game. So from what it sounds like, he's close. As Jim Hiller said, he's close. But don't read too much into the fact that he wasn't wearing the red jersey because he doesn't like to wear the red jersey. But again, he is close, which is a very good sign. So Arvidsson was skating on the 4th line in practice, according to reports, with Trevor Lewis and Alex Turcotte. And Blake Lizotte was playing on the wing on the 3rd line with Pierre Dubois and Alex Laferriere in practice. Arvidsson has typically, when he was in the lineup, now there's only 4 games, but he's usually on that nice line with Philip Deneau and Trevor Moore. Will he see time on the 4th line? That remains to be seen. I guess I could understand the Kings wanted to ease him back into the lineup by giving him those kind of 4th line minutes. Of course, we have seen, though, with head coach Jim Hiller, that just by where players line up in practice, not always translating into where they might necessarily play in the game. So we probably shouldn't read too much into that at this point. There was also reports that Arvidsson did not see time practicing with the Kings power play units. So that I think that's also a bit of an indication he's not quite ready to return yet, although things are looking better as far as when he'll return soon. We know Viktor Arvidsson is going to be a part of the Kings power play when he comes back. So that is absolutely going to happen. Are we going to see Viktor Arvidsson against the Blackhawks on Tuesday? Seems very doubtful. Probably won't even see him the next night against the Minnesota Wild, with the Kings playing the final of their back-to-back games on the schedule this season. But I think we could circle Saturday night at home against the Tampa Bay Lightning as a possible return for Viktor Arvidsson. So we'll certainly be keeping our eyes on that. So clearly he is close. The Kings do close out their mini 3-game homestand on Saturday against Tampa Bay, and then they go out on the road to close out the month of March. They've got a 4-game Canadian road trip: Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, and Winnipeg. I would expect to see Viktor Arvidsson go on that road trip. If he doesn't play in the Tampa game, I would expect to see him at some point on that road trip back in the Kings lineup. We've talked about it before. The Kings are pinning their hopes on a healthy Viktor Arvidsson to give them that boost they need, which is understandable, but it's also a dicey proposition. 2 back surgeries in his time in LA. The last injury he had when he came back briefly was a non-contact injury. Look, we've talked about it in a previous episode. Judging by the eye test and judging by the stats, even though it was only 4 games and the Kings were 4-0 in those games, Viktor Arvidsson clearly makes a difference for the LA Kings, but he obviously can't make a difference if he's not healthy. So I understand the Kings being very careful with him. I'm fine easing him back into the lineup and trying to get him ready to go at full speed once the playoff starts. I even have been on record as I would not be opposed to them keeping him out until the playoffs because he is that important. But, I understand the debate. You want to give him some action. You want to give him some reps. You want to make him feel as comfortable as possible. I'm guessing, look, as long as he's cleared medically, if he wants to get back in the lineup, pretty hard to hold him out if he thinks that's what's in his best interest to get him ready for playoff hockey. But again, the report on Viktor Arvidsson is he's close, and we will all be watching, updating it day by day. And once he gets back on the ice, we will be hoping for the best and keeping our fingers crossed that he can stay healthy, because the Kings would have to have a healthy Viktor Arvidsson to do anything in the playoffs this season. Real quick, I am 99% sure I talked about this on a previous episode. I think I even did a Name That King segment, if you recall that little fun thing that I do sometimes when it's talking about former Kings players and if they're in the news. Anyway, former Kings forward Wayne Simmonds officially announced his retirement on Monday. He had previously told a reporter, I think about a month ago, he played his last game, but he made it official today. He was a second-round pick of the Kings in 2007, immediately was in the Kings lineup that year and played all 82 games with them. Didn't see any time in the AHL at all. He would play his first 3 seasons in the NHL with the LA Kings. He posted 39 goals, 93 points, and 264 penalty minutes. Wayne was one of those guys that would play hard every night. He had good skill, but he would always stick up for his teammates. Definitely not a goon, but never afraid to get his nose dirty. Would go hard to the net. One of those guys that you just really need on your team. And he was one of my favorite LA Kings because of that style that he played. However, he did end up getting traded away, unfortunately, in a deal that helped the Kings win a Stanley Cup. Simmonds and Braden Shen and a second-round pick go to Philadelphia for Mike Richards, and he obviously did help the Kings win a couple of cups. So, yes, the Kings paid a price for letting a couple of, at the time, young players go and guys who ended up having long careers. But, hey, 2 Stanley Cups, key piece for that. That's a trade that obviously worked out. Wayne Simmonds played over 1,000 NHL games over a 15-year career, so a great career for Wayne Simmonds. He spent 8 of those seasons in Philadelphia. He signed a 1-day contract with the Flyers today so he could retire as a Philadelphia Flyer. So just wanted to recognize Wayne Simmonds, one of my favorite players when he was around the Kings. wish him well in the next chapter of his life as he has retired from the NHL. Up next, I have to correct a mistake I made and tell you where the Kings are in the standings. They are, in fact, still in third place in the Pacific. We'll also have a rain report as well. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA and NHL players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. LA Kings face the Chicago Blackhawks 7 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast to your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search LA Kings. All right, I said on Friday's show that if the Kings lost to the Stars on Saturday, which they did, and the Vegas Golden Knights beat the Devils on Sunday, which they did, the Kings would fall out of the third spot in the Pacific Division because both LA and Vegas would have the same number of points, same number of games played, but the Golden Knights had the tiebreaker due to more regulation wins. Well, all of that was accurate, except when I looked at wins, I mistakenly looked at total wins. That includes overtime and shootout wins and not regulation wins, which is the tiebreaker. So Vegas does have more wins than the Kings, 36-34, but the Kings have more regulation wins than Vegas, 29-28. And again, that is the tiebreaker. So with that in mind, let's check out the standings in the Pacific Division and the Western Conference playoff race coming out of the weekend. Edmonton is in second place in the Pacific. They've got 84 points. The Kings now have 79 points. They are 5 points back of the Oilers in the race for home ice in a potential first-round playoff matchup. Nashville is your number 1 wildcard team in the West. They've got 82 points, 3 more points than the Kings. Vegas, again, has the same number of points, 79. But again, they're the number 2 wildcard team because the Kings do have that one more regulation victory. So right now, Kings and Golden Knights, 79 points, same number of games, one more regulation win for LA. That has them holding on to that third spot in the Pacific and has Vegas in that second wildcard spot in the Western Conference. St. Louis Blues are trying to make things interesting. They're on a 4-game winning streak. They're up to 75 points. So they're 4 points out of that final wildcard spot. Minnesota with 74 points hanging around as well. And they've got a game coming up head-to-head against the LA Kings coming up on Wednesday. If the playoffs started today, it would still be the LA Kings against the Edmonton Oilers in the first round. As far as tonight, no games of interest for the Kings. So going into the game against Chicago on Tuesday, the Kings will still be in third place in the Pacific Division. Do want to give you a rain report, checking in on the Kings AHL affiliate in Ontario. The Reign went 1-3 over the past week. Last Monday, they did beat the Calgary Wranglers 6-2, extending their winning streak to 8 in a row. Ontario was down 2-1. They scored the next 5 goals. Defenseman Steven Santini had 2 of them, and Aaron Dell earned the win in net, allowing 2 goals on 33 shots. On Wednesday, the Reign would lose to the San Diego Gulls 2-1. Samuel Fagemo had the lone goal for Ontario, his 35th of the season. Eric Portillo took the loss in net, allowing 2 goals on just 13 shots against. Friday, the Reign would lose to the Coachella Valley Firebirds 4-3 in a shootout. Samuel Fagemo gets his 36th goal of the season. Aaron Dell took the loss in that. He allowed 3 goals on 28 shots in regulation, and then he allowed one of the 3 shooters to score in the shootout. Ontario went 0-for-3 on their shootout attempts. And then on Sunday, the Reign lost to the Bakersfield Condors 4-0. Eric Portillo took the loss, allowing 3 goals on 33 shots, and the Reign not able to get a goal against Bakersfield. So after the 8-game winning streak, the Reign are now riding a 3-game losing streak. As for Samuel Fagemo, he is still tied for the AHL goal-scoring lead with Adam Gaudette of the Springfield Falcons. Ontario still in 4th place in the Pacific Division of the AHL with a 31-21-7 record. 3 games coming up this week for the Reign. On Wednesday, they'll face the Tucson Roadrunners. Friday, they will be against the Calgary Wranglers, and Sunday against the Bakersfield Condors. Those are all home games for the Ontario Reign. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Tuesday, we will preview the Kings-Blackhawks game tomorrow night. Wednesday, we'll obviously recap that game and have a preview of the Kings-Wild game on Wednesday. Thursday, we'll recap that game. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have another Kings fan feedback show. Maybe we can mix in a special guest at some point. And, of course, every day we will update you on the latest news around Kings forward Viktor Arvidsson. The email address, if you want to participate in the feedback show or contact me for anything you want to talk about, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can also comment on the YouTube episodes as well in the comment section. As far as staying connected with us on social media, we're on X, Twitter, and Instagram at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.